While Sony's new remote play controller has reawakened my love for the PlayStation 5, for others, it's been a complete disaster. So why is the PlayStation Portal so polarizing? Let's start with my experience and why I think it's actually gotten better over the past 2 weeks. Whether the PlayStation Portal has optimized itself for my Wi-Fi setup, or I've intuitively gotten better at predicting which locations around my house it will perform at its optimum, it really has become a seamless gaming experience within the bounds of my own home. There are people whose Wi-Fi connections have simply not worked with the PlayStation Portal, and I completely empathize with you. I would be furious as well, and I don't blame you for sending it back. Sony have already pushed out a software update which they say is going to bring more stability to people's connections. Hopefully that means they've had a good period of time to analyze the connection across a whole range of different networks and are able to bring stability to more users. And it's a great sign that they do seem committed to updating this over time, potentially bringing some new features and keeping things up to date. I mentioned in my initial review that I'm a busy dad. I don't have time to get through games, so it is pretty miraculous that I've been able to get to 70% of the Spider-Man 2 map in just 2 weeks. A lot of you pointed out that almost every single review seems to be playing Spider-Man 2 on the Portal, and I think there's a reason for that. Spider-Man 2 is the perfect tech demo for the DualSense controller. The way that it actually makes use of haptic feedback and those adaptive triggers, it just makes a brilliant gaming experience. And that's even more immersive when you're playing this on the PlayStation Portal, which is of course basically just a DualSense with a screen in the middle. This is the main reason that the PlayStation Portal is so much better than other remote play options out there. And I really would urge you to refrain from judgment until you've held it in your hands and experience how immersive this is for yourself. The DualSense layout makes the PlayStation Portal incredibly comfortable too, but because the screen rests on a raised surface and isn't protected by the rest of the body like other handhelds, it does feel very fragile. I know I'm not the only one who wishes Sony had shipped a case with this device, but at least some screen protectors have come out now, and I installed one the other day with some nice little cutouts for the analog triggers that really is a perfect protection for at least the screen of my PlayStation Portal. And that screen is really worth protecting. No, it's not an OLED, but at 1080p and 60 frames per second, it is a vibrant, beautiful way to play your PlayStation 5. As someone who uses this primarily in bed, I am getting a little tired of plugging in my big headphones just to experience the audio. I've reluctantly put in a pre-order for the Pulse Explore earbuds, basically to review them on the channel, but I would really have preferred to just use my AirPods. And this is where I can absolutely relate to a lot of the people who've had a negative response to the PlayStation Portal. In building this really specific remote play controller, Sony have cut back on a lot of features that we associate as the norm across technology in general. As someone who's worked in the mainstream media for over a decade, I think it's brilliant that there are these content creators and media figures who are holding corporations like Sony to account and advocating for people who really wanted to see a successor to the PlayStation Vita. I would have also loved to see Sony come out with a more dedicated handheld gaming device. I do think though that you can take that position to an extreme where you actually forget who the PlayStation Portal is built for and give those people the right advice on whether to pick it up or not. It's also really easy to underestimate the size of that demographic. I've seen people in my comments saying this is a super narrow audience, but trust me, there are a lot more parent gamers out there than PlayStation Vita aficionados. It's not to be confrontational, there's no point in pitting these two groups against each other, but it is worth accepting that parent gamers are people that often have a lot of disposable income, enough to buy a PlayStation 5 in the first place, and very little time in which to actually use it. And look, I know a lot of people can intellectually understand this, but until you've had kids, it's absolutely impossible to understand what parents actually go through on a day-to-day basis. I personally spend 95% of my time working a day job and trying to be the best father and husband I can possibly be. The time I spend with my son brings me more joy than I can possibly express. It's also incredibly draining, and unless you find those pockets of time for yourself to recharge and engage with things you used to do before you became a parent, then you'll slowly become a bad parent. I know a lot of people just think this is about letting your kids watch Bluey while you play PlayStation on the sofa. I'm sure that might come later down the line, but for now, Gabriel still actually goes to sleep next to us in our bed. So the only time that I can actually play the PlayStation is when he's nodded off, and that means either sneaking down to the living room bedroom and feeling pretty lonely, or just staying snuggled up next to him in bed and playing PlayStation Portal from the comfort of our bedroom. Even if we do get a night off and my wife is watching Bridget Jones on the TV, I'm not particularly interested. I can now simply play my PlayStation Portal on the couch, and I can still be in the same physical space as her, even if I am deeply immersed into the world of Spider-Man's Manhattan. The reason that I'm telling you this is because I think it's really important to have more diversity in the media landscape. And I've definitely noticed that a lot of tech reviewers that maybe are a little bit older than the gamer reviewers that already have families, like your average consumer, for example, have pointed out a lot of these benefits as a parent gamer. And that's also why I think organisations like IGN and The Verge have been a little bit more favourable to the PlayStation Portal than people may have expected. Ultimately, those are people who have steady jobs at a big organisation, can probably afford to become parents a bit earlier, and have experiences that are able to bring to light in their journalism. The sheer convenience of the PlayStation Portal is also why a lot of parents will like this compared to something like the Backbone or the Steam Deck. I'm a big fan of the Steam Deck, but not a lot of parents will have the patience to dig into the desktop mode, figure out how Sharky works, and then get it all set up before hoping that the Steam Deck doesn't crash when they open up the apps. Honestly, I'm beginning to think that my Steam Deck might have a problem with it, because it's now just started crashing immediately as soon as I boot up games like Dredge and Baldur's Gate 3. So I'm actually going through the RMA process. So whether the Steam Deck is a great option for you or not, I think it's impossible to deny that there are some quality control issues across all of the devices, and troubleshooting that can be incredibly frustrating if you've only got a window of 2 or 3 hours to actually get some gaming done. I'm also not sure the PlayStation Portal is as expensive as people are making it out. People keep comparing this to the Backbone 1 and pointing out that for £100 you can have a controller which gives you access to remote play. But one thing they conveniently leave out is the fact that Backbone also have an annual subscription of about £57 if you want to maintain full access to their app. Honestly, I don't know if anyone's paying for this subscription, because you certainly don't need it, and a lot of the features don't seem worth paying for. But I bet there are a lot of people who sign up to the free trial and then forget about it a year later and suddenly end up with a recurring payment of £57 for a service that they never use. And to me, that is the best example of profiteering that anybody could give, and at least Sony aren't doing that, at least not with the PlayStation Portal directly. The other thing is that you are getting all those DualSense controls, and for me that is worth twice the price of the Backbone one. Hopefully I've engaged in this debate as respectfully as possible. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How are you getting on with the PlayStation Portal 2 weeks later? My full review is up here, so check that out if you want some more information. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in a bit.